Welcome to More Action, the podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals. I'm your host, Shelly Bryan, and together we have candid conversations with industry leaders to uncover valuable wisdom and lessons learned. My hope is you use these lessons to intentionally take more action in business and life. I hope you share and enjoy. Welcome back to the show here on More Action. I am incredibly honored and excited to have today's guest because when I talk about more action, this is it. Carlyn is one of those gals that has taken action throughout her entire life. And so I am so excited to hear about not only that, but how she is helping other business owners right now. And so I welcome to the show Carlyn Bushman, and she has over 25 years experience in marketing, management, technology, and business financials. She's a founder, an owner, an educator. You're going to hear all about the education that she's doing, and she's really changing the landscape of it. So Carlyn, thank you so much for joining, and welcome again to the show.
Thanks, Shelly. It is so great to be here. And speaking of taking action, we just met not too long ago by a colleague who introduced us, and here we are on your podcast together. We actually took action. That speaks so many loud words and celebratory moments. You don't have to wait for that perfect moment.
Okay, let's start there. The perfect moment, because that's so true, right? It's like and here's the thing. I want to point out to everyone listening in right now, we actually originally met. I think we decided, what was it, last October? Was it last October? And we got introduced and we actually met in person and it was like, hi, nice to meet you. And then we kind of just had things in life. But guess what? Actually, Carlyn reached back out to me. We got together, saw each other in person. We were lucky enough to be in the same town, relatively close to each other, and got together, and here we are. So it doesn't always happen when you want, right? But it's the messy action. And so what I'd love for you to just share a little bit on, because we have a little bit of those similar backgrounds, is we started kind of corporate, and share kind of your corporate experience and then venturing out into that big jump of entrepreneurship and business ownership.
Wow. Messy action. Love that word. Oh, I'm going to use that. That is so good because we talk about what it's like to have this journey, whether it's entrepreneurship, small business, as you would define it, corporate experience, intrapreneur, entrepreneur,
Yep.
So many different buzzwords, right? And you think about all of these milestones that you go through, and in corporate, it got to the point where I was really loving corporate, loved everything about corporate, the structure, the metrics, the growth, the opportunities. You could really see where you were headed. And there was a lot of structure there that you could follow on certain job paths or what have you. Then you get to a point you're thinking, okay, and then things happen to you and for you, right? And if you can constantly remember, this is happening for you. This is not a negative thing. This is happening for you. So you get some of those bumps in the road, some of these aha moments where you think, maybe I don't really belong here anymore. Maybe it is time for me to step outside of corporate and try my own thing, whatever that aha moment might be like for you. And I'm telling you, it was very unexpected when all of a sudden I realized this corporate lifestyle, as glamorous as it might seem on the outside, is not working on the inside. Let's just say it got messy fast, and decided it was time for me to part ways and go on my own journey. And it was really, really, really hard. And then it got even messier. I don't know about you, Shelly, but entrepreneurship is super messy. For anybody who thinks, ooh, I'm an entrepreneur, let's just say, taking action is one thing, but the messiness of it is a whole nother thing to address.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely love that. There's a couple things that I want to expand on a little bit more, but you're so right. My leaving corporate right after 17 years, I don't know that it could have been any messier. Just the leaving of it, it felt glorious. And then when my first business, and I've shared this on the show, right? I bought into a franchise, built it out. 11 months later, shut it down to fraud and misrepresentation, lost 7 figures. Talk about messy, but let me tell you what, all of that experience is lending to what I have built right now. So while that was really hard, that was a major valley to be in, that led me to where I am now. So what I wanted to touch on with you, because you said something that was really interesting, and I don't think that gets talked about enough. And it's intrapreneurship versus entrepreneurship. Right when you said that, it made me think, because I loved corporate. I was like you. Oh my gosh, there were so many opportunities. The not only the golden handcuffs that were keeping me there, but the education and the relationships and everything. And I felt like an intrapreneur. The organization was like that when I first started. But when I left, I had turned into an employee, mainly because that intrapreneur option was not available anymore. So I wanted entrepreneurism. So I'd like for you to kind of share the difference. I kind of alluded to it, but I'd love for you to share maybe your experience and how you would explain that.
I agree with you 1,000%, Shelley. Like I felt the same way that the entrepreneurship opportunities that were before me were fabulous. Like I was creating a lot of my own path. We were growing. It felt like a small organization within a much larger organization. And there was a lot of trust there, and you could make decisions and you could make mistakes and you could continue making decisions, and you were leading a team to growth, and you could feel the energy and the environment. And at that point, I was really dedicated to serving my team and for my team to like level up to all aspects of their own personal growth and their growth journey that they wanted to have. And it was like, that was the entrepreneurship in me. I could decide more education for a particular team member, or more growth, or more expansion, or new responsibilities. And I was leading the team like I was leading my own company within a structured environment, which was so exhilarating. I don't even know how else to explain it. We are on fire. And when you create that culture and that atmosphere, it makes for that entrepreneurship to blend nicely with the corporate aspect. And I loved every part of that. And then all of a sudden, just like what you alluded to, it shifted. And I think it's because we were going through growing pains and things were changing. Leadership was changing in our organization. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was serving upper management more, and I was serving that space. And I was serving more of the C-suite. And as I was part of it, I was also serving in that space. And I no longer had the capacity to also serve my team. It was just, I felt stretched in those spaces. And it started to get a little messy where I felt the culture was shifting. And now I was serving upper management versus serving team for the growth that I could see happening. And it just felt conflicted all of a sudden. I didn't feel like I was the entrepreneur that I had the ability to be anymore. And I couldn't, if I wasn't doing it, then it was hard to teach to that and encourage that aspect. And I felt like that was probably the time and place for me to step out and practice entrepreneurship, learning everything I learned from inside a corporate structure and being that entrepreneur. And when I share that story and when I talk about that with others who are inside a corporate and still have that opportunity to be an intrapreneur inside of their corporate structure, it is like an awakening. Like they feel like they are being heard and they can like come to the table with new ideas. And even recently, I talked to my husband actually inside of his organization, and he welcomes, everybody coming to the table with new ideas. He still creates that environment and that culture inside of his corporate structure. And it's so nice to hear that that can still exist.
It's really interesting. I feel like I was like, is this me talking or is this Carlyn talking? Because I was like, that was my exact experience. Small organization into a really large organization. And listen, growth does happen, but you as a business owner now, right? Growth can happen and we welcome it and we want it to. But protecting that culture, that original culture, I think is so important. And when you said there was lots of leadership change, I was like, yep, I remember that. And I think that it's something that if you can protect that way as a business owner or as an organization to have the opportunities to bring on and cultivate and retain entrepreneurs, you have no idea what an asset that is. And I know you and I recently have talked about retention, right? Retention of employees. We're both growing teams in our business. You work with other business owners, and just like retention is so important. And this is fun. This is funny. So before I dive into my next question for you, is the reason why the entrepreneur hit me was obviously we've shared that. But recently I was at an entrepreneur event, and there was a gal there, and she was brand new. And I just said, "Hey, how's it going? Who are you?" And she's like, "Well, I actually work at the bank. Like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know if I can be here." I was like, "Well, you can be here." She's like, "I don't know if I am ready for the risk." And I looked at her and I just said, "Okay, well, I think being here is good for you to understand." I said, "But you know what? Have you ever talked about with your leadership about being an intrapreneur?" And she was like, "What? Is that a thing?" And I had this great conversation like we just had on here with her, and she left because listen, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It is not for everybody. It is really hard, and you got to be able to pick yourself up most days, because there's more tough days than good days. I will tell you, the good days are really sweet, but the bad days are more often. So you just got to be able to work through it. And if you can find those organizations where you can be an entrepreneur and cultivate that, it is so great from an employee perspective to be able to have that growth. And you just heard how excited both of us were talking about it, but also from a business owner perspective, how about a way to retain incredible talent at your business? So when I talk about retention, and I know that you are working with businesses, what are some of the things that you see holding businesses back from retaining great talent?
Shelly, I love this question. I was literally asked this question a couple days ago, and it's so important. And I think that one of the biggest things you have to remember is delegation, delegation, delegation. You have to remember, let go a little bit of control. I know it's your business, your baby. I get that. You have to empower your team to try things, to come with new ideas to the table. And hey, guess what? They're going to make mistakes. Okay, that happens. Like, I made plenty of mistakes in my career path, right? In my growth, in my intrapreneur role within the corporate setting. And that's okay. So you have to be able to delegate, let them make some mistakes, but because they'll just keep coming back with more and more ideas. And you want to create a culture that there is no idea that is not worth listening to. I really, really embrace that. And I went to Harvard Business School for a women's leadership conference course thing. And there was a woman there from Estee Lauder. And she said two things to me in her leadership role. And she was like definitely C-suite leadership at Estee Lauder. And she said, "I have two rules of thumb when it comes to management. I just love these. And they're very, very simple. The two rules are never walk into my office or walk into my space with a problem to dump it and just leave. Never, never do that. So I encourage you, if somebody on your team comes to you with a problem, encourage them to also come to you with the two ideas." And I embrace that through my corporate role. And I do still today. Don't just give your problem to me. Come with two ideas, because it's not necessarily that I want to think through exactly what those two ideas are. It has your team take ownership and come to you and think, I don't want to use the word outside the box, but think of great solutions to that particular problem. It could be a very interesting solution that you wouldn't have thought of that may or may not be relevant, but at least you're allowing your team members to think through a solution. Her second rule of thumb was, do not discuss your compensation with each other if they can't fix it for you. So always, when you're talking compensation, go to the person who's actually going to make a difference in your compensation or your bonus structure. So those were her two things. If you're going to talk about your compensation with other team members and they can't do anything about it, then it's a waste of time, and it causes a lot of noise amongst your team, and you don't want to do that. It's completely unnecessary. So I really embrace those two rules through my whole management career, and they've really always served me. And I love the idea of allowing your team members to really step in and own some of the growth of your company and share with them how that looks and what your culture is in that space.
I think it's so important. Like, thank you so much for sharing that. Because I mean, obviously, Estee Lauder, an extremely valuable company, highly successful. And hearing that, I think sometimes we think so big and we have to do all of this. And what is the benefits package? And is that going to keep them here? And all these big things. But culture, like it sounds like rule number 1 was culture and rule number 2 was culture. Like it was both of them. And while the other one was talking about compensation, but ultimately it was culture. Are you willing to listen? And so I think that the more as organizations and the more business owners that are coming and the more everybody bring it back to the culture. And I love this conversation because it's very hot off the press from Chris and I too. There's someone we'd love to bring on to the team. And immediately Chris is like, okay, well, we need to do this benefits patent. And I was like, whoa. We need to be able to give them, back to your delegation point, give them, here is what you are going to own. You are going to come up with the system and processes. This is yours. That is creating an entrepreneur. I want you to be here forever. I want you to own this and make it your own and be able to teach others. And so I think the more that we can create the opportunities for that, the better.
Well, and Shelley, getting really, really clear on what does that look like for your organization. And if you're a solopreneur and listening to this, I'm talking about, do you have somebody as a 1099 and like contractor? Do you have a graphic designer? Do you have a social media person? Do you have whoever that person might be? They don't have to be an employee to have this culture start, right? You don't have to wait until you bring your first W-2 employee on your payroll to start this shift. You can have longevity and retention with all 1099 employees or 1099 contractors. And they will continuously not only see the culture you're building, but want to be a part of that long term. And then, by the way, that becomes part of the community. They're talking to their friends and family, et cetera, about where they work, what they do, what the culture is, and they can speak to it very specific, like with a lot of detail. And you want to be able to create something that is so simply understood that your culture is nurturing and retention and listening, right? Listening is such a big part of retention.
It's so true. It's so true. And like, listen, as leaders, right? And whether you are a solopreneur or whether you manage a gigantic multi-million-dollar organization, right? Providing that ownership to someone else, I mean, that I feel like is the baseline. That is the baseline. Let them, as leaders, let them be the hero. So often, especially, and I saw this towards the end of my kind of corporate tenure, is everyone was like vying for that pat on the back. Who's going to be the hero? And it was always kind of that upper management. The great leaders are like, I did nothing. It's them. Let them be the hero. This is like sales 101. Let your client be the hero. Let your employee be the hero and the winner. Make them feel valued and comfortable. So culture, I mean, we just kind of ranted on culture a little bit, but you can hear from two gals that have spent a lot of time in corporate and now business ownership. It is number one.
Shelley, I have to go back to the story that you shared with me while we were sitting at AJ's together when we had the opportunity to meet in real life about going to lunch. Mm-hmm. So please share that story, because to me, I've shared that story with so many people already, the podcast that you listen to and the idea that dropped in regarding retention and going to lunch. I love it so much.
It was it was funny. As we started this conversation, I was like, I needed to pull up that episode so I could name who did it. But it was like, so, and if you've been following me on social media, I am very selective. I do love podcasting, but I'm very selective in what I listen to. I think it's very important that we guard our heart, our eyes, and our ears and our mouth. And so one of the podcasts that I do love is actually My First Million. This is with Sam Parr and Sean Perry. Two kind of tech guys, right? And I'm this like 44-year-old woman. Like, I just love it. They have a great banter between them, but they have amazing conversations. And I'm actually looking, as we are talking right now, trying to find this guest. I will find it, but let's just dive into the story, because this gentleman is a published author. Do you remember his name?
No.
Okay. We'll find it. And I'm going to I'll leave the link in the show notes. So everyone tuning in can listen to this too. But he is a published author. He is a Harvard professor. He is brilliant and, has probably one of the driest sense of humors. When you listen to the podcast, you're like, what the heck is going on here? But oftentimes people like that have the most profound things to say. And it was a small piece of this very long podcast, but he has now a team of 14. He actually moved his family from the Northeast over to England. He is living in England. He gets to do that. And he has a team of 14. And one of his rules, and I took this, I shared it with you, but I took this, is one of his rules is he goes, the best way that you can retain people is by making them all friends, creating opportunities so that they can all be friends, because who wouldn't want to go work with their friends every single day? And so he has a rule. He goes, if more than 4 of you guys go to lunch, I buy. So it's like he is creating the opportunity as the leader. He doesn't have to be there. He will just buy lunch so long 4 people are there. And I absolutely love that. And he was doing a book tour and was like going to, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. And he's like, yeah, 6 people decided they want to come with me. And I was like, all right, let's go. And he paid for all of them to come. Now that is something, and you gotta believe a guy like that. If you give it out, people will not abuse it. If you rarely do anything for someone, people are going to grasp for it, like because it's free or because like they never get anything from you. But because it is part of the culture that he has created, you know that they aren't abusing it. And I absolutely love that. So that is a rule that we have brought into our organization. If more than 4 go to lunch together, it's on us. And I absolutely freaking love it.
I absolutely loved it so much. I have shared it with, I don't know how many people at this point, but I always recognize you in our conversation. So kudos to you. I love knowing that you've embraced it. I don't think I knew that when we first talked about it, because I think it was very fresh when we first talked about it. Oh, I just
listened to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I since have told others about it who are embracing it. And now there's several of us who are really figuring out how to do that with such a hybrid or remote work organization, right? So many of us have remote workers, or sometimes there's a hybrid, et cetera. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we implement something like this to continue the culture from a remote works lifestyle and work style? And I think there's so much to be said there. And I just love that. And you're right. Who wouldn't want to work with their friends? Like that's exactly, I mean, what a beautiful way to look at it, because you spend so much time at work anyway, you might as well make it fun. You have to keep the fun in it.
Well, and it's like, if you are working with your friends, you don't want to let your friends down. You want to do your best work. You want to show up as best as you can, right? So it's not even just like you're working with your friends and it's fun. I think that is number one. But number 2 is like, you want to produce, like, this is my friend. I don't want to leave them hanging. I want to make sure that they are taken care of and they can go look great. I just love that. It's like that pay it forward, and I just love it.
Yes, I agree. So that is delegation, friendships, right? All of those things go into retention. And once you have that cadence of retention in your organization, and you feel like you're very transparent with that, and your team can come to you with all kinds of different things, they feel very comfortable doing that, that's going to continue to reproduce itself, right? So you're going to be known in the business community what that looks like. People are going to be interested in working with and for you. And you're going to create that culture and that environment that is always nurturing to their growth, your company's growth. It really does pay it forward, like you said.
It does. It does. And I'll tell you, those golden handcuffs will only keep people for so long. Trust me, there is a tipping point. I think both of us hit that tipping point and worked in organizations in an industry that had incredible golden handcuffs, if I do say so myself. And there came a point where it wasn't enough, right? It was the culture that I actually walked away from, and sounds like you did too.
I agree. And then you go into the opposite and you're thinking, well, how hard can entrepreneurship be?
You were like, yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Well, I kind of want to shift gears here for a second, because another topic that we discussed that I think we hear a lot, honestly, but we hear very top line is like, get in the room. make sure you get in the room. And it's like, you're a compilation of those you spend the most time with, and all of these different things, right? It's very cliche. And I think it's important, but I want to dive deeper here because I have been in the room and then I felt and I use this analogy, I was the small fish and I became a big fish. And then when I was in the big fish, I couldn't add as much value to the group, and the group couldn't add the value to me. And so I needed to find a new pond where I could become another small fish, right? So that is leveling up the type of business owners are around, or the skills of the people that I want to be around, to be able to add to them as well as them to add to me. So getting in the room, I think, is like part negative 0.5, but like, let's talk about what that means to you. Because I know that both of us right now are like, okay, we're in this like really incredible growth, and where's our room?
Well, and you brought up a really interesting topic. I recently was talking to another colleague of mine, and with those room changes, as we're phrasing that, it can also be triggering. And I don't want to ignore the fact that it feels good when you're a big fish in a small pond as you've grown, right? Because sometimes that feels okay, like, okay, I've got this. Yep, I feel good. I'm standing taller. I know my stuff. I'm able to give to others. That kind of feeds my soul, might feed my ego a little, right? Because I'm like, poof, okay, I've got this. And then all of a sudden, Shelly, you shift and decide to jump into that like bigger pond, and you're a small fish all of a sudden, using that analogy again. And it can be like, what am I doing here? Should I even be here? I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't make enough money, like all of that. And you have to be like, if you have some awareness about that and you have some tools, otherwise it's really difficult. It's intimidating, but it's really meant to be enough uncomfortable for you to experience that growth. But I'm telling you, like, there is like a balance there too, because it can be really challenging to think, I don't know, do I even belong here?
Right. When you were going through it, I was like, worthy. Am I worthy to be in this room? And I think that's a big one, because you start in a room. Oh my gosh, look at this. Okay. If you're going to be tuning in on YouTube, you will see Jamie Kern Lima's book, Worthy. I can't wait. I'd love to get your 2 cents on this, because this is on my coffee table. Haven't read it yet. So I'd love to hear your sense on that. But it's so true, is that there were times, and I shared this. Actually, I was the speaker for a local organization here in town in January. And I joined in like October of 22. But I will tell you, I went to into that room in April of 22, and I left because I didn't feel worthy. I didn't join. I didn't come in there. I was like, I came in, I was like, I don't fit in here. No. And listening to me talk right now, you'd be like, Shelly, you would feel like that? Hell yeah, I would. Absolutely. I was like, I am not worthy of this room at all. And I left. I was a chicken. I stopped taking action. But guess what I did? Is I actually took action on myself. I questioned a lot of my worthiness. I had to go back and do the self work on me. It wasn't about like, oh, I need to go earn more money, or my business needs to hit some imaginary level. I had to work on me so that when I stepped back into that room, I came in as who I see myself as, regardless of anybody else. And that I think is so important, that when you step into the room, know your worth. And if you feel uncomfortable or what have you, know you're not alone, but don't stop. Don't stop. It's about like coming back. Do you have like an experience where that has happened to you?
Absolutely. I've sat in my car in parking lots before going, do I really need to, maybe next time, maybe next month, maybe next year, whatever the case might be. So absolutely. I think that happens to all of us. And we just don't want to talk about it all the time, because we don't want to give that oxygen, because will that continue to manifest it in that direction? So there's a little bit of a balance there. Yes, we need to talk about it. I think it's great to talk about it, but don't give it too much time and attention either, because you don't want to create that pattern for yourself. And I really look at it like going to the gym. right? So you don't go to the gym one time or two times and think, okay, now I've got, six pack abs, or now I've got, whatever it might be, whatever the strength workout or cardio workout that's important to you. You have to go back and you go back and you go back. Well, you do that same thing when you show up and you show up and you show up, just like anything. You have to work that muscle until you feel comfortable. And then you go to the next level and you're like, wait, hey, whoa, I just did that. Like, I just did that. Right. So I really encourage, if it's a little uncomfortable and exciting, little nerve-wracking, a little exciting, a little uncomfortable, you are in exactly the right spot. You should absolutely walk in that room, or walk into that networking event, or walk into that office, or go ask for that raise, or whatever it is. It has to be right at that space. But it is a challenge for sure. It's a challenge all the time for me as well.
Yeah. Now, when you feel like, okay, you've been in a room for a little bit, right? And now you're comfortable, right? Because you have strengthened that muscle, to your analogy. And I love that. It's so relevant. But now you feel like, okay, I'm looking for another room. I'm looking for like that next step. How do you go about it? And I know we might not have the answers here, but I loved your insights, because I know, you have a vast community of business owners that you work with. When they're feeling that too, how do you coach them or guide them through finding that next room or that next mentor to be with?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we know the obvious, and that is asking for referrals, asking each other, looking ahead to see or find those mentors, those leaders, those humans that are that much further along than you, whatever that might look like, whether it is their milestones, where you'd like to be in so many years, whatever the case is. I mean, that's an easy answer, but I don't know. I don't know if I have the perfect answer. When I'm talking to clients, when I'm talking to other businesses and encouraging them to step out to, do some of that searching on their own, it's a challenge, absolutely a challenge. And I don't know 100%. I'm going to be very honest. I'm doing it right now, as I continue to navigate that space. And I look to somebody like you, and that's why I was asking the question, right? Exactly to you, Shelley, where would you go?
It's so funny. I actually have lunch with a colleague tomorrow that I've met to discuss this, to continue on our conversation that we had when we met, that we're having right now on the podcast, and that I'm going to have with her. Because honestly, what makes me feel a little bit good about all this, even though it's like completely unknown, right? I'm like looking for you for an answer. You're doing it to me, is like, we're all in the same boat. And what a cool feeling, right? Is that we're all, and like you connect more with people that are in this area. And then we start leaning on each other. Hey, I found this. Hey, I found that. Or, oh, don't go here. I think it's like knowing that you're in that kind of weird transitional phase. It's okay. Like, you're not alone. It means something really exciting is coming. And it's just keep taking these little steps, talk to people, like you said. I absolutely love that.
Well, and I think it goes to show that we both don't all have the answers all the time. And hey, guess what? That's okay. And timing is everything. If you just like anything, right? So if you just like calm down for a minute, give yourself some space, and let certain things drop in. And that might sound woo, but there's timing on everything. I had a conversation with an incredible woman this morning, and she has some fabulous masterminds and things that she does. And I told her, exactly some of this conversation. She said, oh, let me chew on that a little bit. Let me chew on that and get back to you. Great. So I'm putting it out there. And that conversation literally happened this morning. And now I'm talking to you about the same thing. And jumping on this podcast, before we jumped on, I didn't know we were going to go talk about this particular subject matter. So yes, there is something that we are putting out there to get some information and grab those resources and have this conversation. Just like anything we would talk about in business, it's okay to not know all the answers, and it's okay to put it out there to have bigger, better, brighter conversations.
Well, and I will say, I 100% agree. But to piggyback on that, it's like talking about it. The more I talk about it, then I'm like, okay, you know what? you two are having that conversation. Like, that's great. Okay. We don't have an answer yet. Okay. We will find one. But the more we talk about it, the more I'm getting connected, the more, someone's like, oh, have you tried this? Or don't go there. Like, I love that, but we have to talk about it. And that's part of what the purpose is of this podcast, is being able to talk about these subjects to even just spark conversation amongst your colleagues, wherever you are in the world. And I think that the more that we could talk about it, then we can all find more solutions. We talked about bringing solutions, right? And it's just so important that maybe one gets created. Who knows, right? There's just so many opportunities.
Well, and to your point, your podcast, Take Action, I would say the first action item that we're talking about here is talking about it. Put it out there that this is what you're looking for. This is what your next phase in your business is. This is the next step to your own personal growth and your business growth. So take action.
100%. Could not agree more. Now, okay, let's shift gears real quick. Because one thing that I love that you do is that you're very specific on who you serve, right? On your organization and who are you serving. And I'd love for you to talk about who that is, because two reasons. One, I just want you to talk about what you do, because you're obviously an expert. You can just hear the passion. But number two is I want people to hear how specific you are, because I absolutely think that is important for any business owner, regardless of the level, is you have to get specific, right? And doesn't mean that's who you only help forever. It just means who you are going to gear your message towards, who or you are going to connect with. So Carlyn, just give us a little bit about who you specifically serve.
Shelly, I did exactly what you did when I started. I was trying to be everything to everybody. And I'm like, of course. And people would tell me you have to niche down. And I'm like, no, I don't have to. I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And kept repeating the same pattern. Not until literally this year. So January of 24, I decided that's it. I am serving emerging brands in a product-based space, because I saw time and time again that these product-based businesses, when they are pre-launch, just getting started, emerging brands, looking for growth to scale, so much capital was going out the door right out of the gates. And I really was answering the same questions, looking at the same analytics, measuring the same progress for all of these different product-based businesses, and said, stop. There's so much money being wasted. And I kept teaching to the same thing. And I finally decided I am dedicating 2024 to product-based businesses who are looking for the education to get grounded, to set goals, and to grow their business. So it's very defined. And it has been a game changer. I love it. I love it every day. I love teaching. I'm there present to do it in person. It really matters to me, because there's this gap that I kept seeing to happen over and over, where these founders would get into business, they'd be 2 or 3 years in and feel like things were going in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, everything would sort of slow to a stop. And it was at that point, so much capital was spent that they weren't sure if they could continue on. And that broke my heart. So I decided, okay, I'm going to fill that gap. It's really important to me. And there's nothing better than educating on your financials. You have to know your numbers to be in business. You have to know your numbers. So that is very near and dear to my heart. Spreadsheets are my love language. And I have dedicated my time to staying in that space to really help, because it's hard. Product-based businesses, anybody who's in a product-based business, congratulations. And let me know if you need help, because there are so many moving parts. We call them different levers that you have to pull at different times. And you really, really have to watch your spending, because inventory can take up so much of your capital so fast.
Okay. So I just love this. If you didn't hear the passion, just hit rewind for about a minute and just hear all the passion there. But how great that because you got so specific this year, and we really dove into conversation just this year. So this is all I know you as, right? But that way, anyone that I meet that has a product, I'm like, oh, you need to meet Carlyn. That's who you need to meet. It's just so easy. So you getting so specific makes it easier for me to be able to refer to you. So if you aren't specific, make sure that you do. Like, we only do commercial properties, commercial construction. We do not do residential, right? And it's very easy because now when we get residential, I'm like, I'm sorry, that's just not within our wheelhouse, you know? And I know that's a hard one. We talked about that offline, but it's so great getting specific. And product based. You talked about cash allocation, right? Okay.
Yes.
I have a few friends, or actually two that I'm thinking of right now, that have two product-based businesses. They're incredible women. They're actually here in the Valley, and they have shared just exactly what you're talking about, right? The inventory and buying it, and how much cash is needed to go out to be able to like even do certain marketing initiatives, because you have to have the inventory. If you're going to do this big marketing push, the last thing you want to do is service a client, be able to service a client or a customer, or not be able to, right? They make a purchase and you're like, sorry, we're out. Like, could you imagine? So what are some of the common like pitfalls that you see with product-based businesses? And here's the thing, if you're tuning in right now, maybe you're part of an organization that has a product-based business, or maybe you provide a service. The service is still a type of product. It may not be a physical product, but this information that we're going to kind of go through right now, kind of this discussion, is still highly valuable, whether you are a product and or a service. So what are some of the common pitfalls that you see when it comes to financials? And my mind is the farthest thing from a spreadsheet. So like, this is going to be very enlightening for me.
Well, I think you really touched on something. So when I'm teaching product-based businesses about their financials, let's just dive into the money part of it really quickly. Yes, if you're a service-based business and you're listening to this, I used to teach both. I used to do these parallel tracks, and there's so many parallels there. So if you have a course you're selling, or if you have an offering, like a package, like website services or digital marketing X or whatever it is, that's the product of your business, right? So if you do any digital courses, if you have books, if you have speaking engagements, those are all products of your service-based business. So you can treat it the same. So some of the pitfalls I see, just number one, let's just be straight up, cost of goods sold. Typically, the math done on the cost of goods sold for you to make a profit on your product that you are selling isn't always done mathematically correct. Because you have to think about, if I have a widget and I can buy it or I manufacture it for $25 and I think, okay, I'm going to sell it for $50. Okay, inside of that $25 gross profit, you got to cover a lot of stuff, including your own salary. So you have to make sure, and most of the time, the first thing we look at is, are your products priced appropriately for direct to consumer sales, wholesale sales, your retail outlets, all kinds of things. So we covered that. So that's like the first part, because you have to make a good profit on your product to continue to not only sustain your business and stay out of the red, but to scale and grow. So that's number one. Number two, don't launch your whole product line at your launch. Like, don't decide to put all of your products out to the marketplace all at one time, because the rule of thumb with product-based businesses, ABL, and this really goes for service-based businesses as well, always be launching. Consumers want to know what's next, right? So they love your socks, but now they've bought your socks, what's next, right? And I'm being very elementary in that explanation. They love your ebook, they love your course, what's the next course? You always want to be launching. Yes, you can evergreen things, absolutely, especially, certainly in the service-based businesses. There's times of the year, et cetera, but you don't want to launch your entire spring or summer line on June 6th and put it all out there, because now it's overwhelming to your consumer. And you know what? If you confuse, you lose. So don't do that. So I would say just stop there. Those are really two things, is to look at what you're doing. And you can do a COGS analysis inside a service-based business. I do it all the time. I know exactly what product I offer and what my cost of goods sold or cost of services sold, what that number is and what that looks like. And there's some great accounting techniques that I talk about that can help you line that up appropriately.
It's so important. I mean, it's funny when we had the restaurant, right? Talking about labor and cost of goods. I mean, it was pennies, right? Like it was penny, like those pennies add up in volume. And if you don't know those numbers, I mean, unfortunately, we had to shut that business down. It was a whole nother thing, but we were looking at them all the time. We knew exactly like, okay, what was the cost of this donut? It was a restaurant. What was the cost of this donut? And is it going up or down? Like we had to know that whether we were going to be profitable. And even though it didn't turn out as we wanted, if I hadn't been looking at those numbers, I couldn't have made the decision to shut it down. Like that's the thing is like, just because you're looking at it doesn't mean like, it's going to be great. Everything's going to be perfect because you're actually looking at your numbers. What it means is that you can now make knowledgeable and educated decisions. That's what it means, right? Even tough decisions. And that was a decision that I had to make. And so I love that you talk about like, look at the numbers, the cost of goods. And the launch, when you were talking, you know what brand I thought of? I thought of Coca-Cola, right? Huge brand.
Yeah.
But what I thought about was that Coca-Cola, because I was like, yeah, they just launched that new like spicy Coke or whatever. And I was like, listen, it's probably going to flop. I don't know what the numbers are, but guess what? It like made me think about Coke. And so it made me come back. I like Coke Zero, Coke Cherry Zero. That's what I like. That's like my sweet treat once a week. And so like, it's funny how like these little things, the biggest of big brands are doing it. And so should the small ones, right? New emerging brands.
Why wouldn't we learn from some of the bigger brands and what they're doing? Another great example is McDonald's. Heard it today. McDonald's had their drive-through set up for AI. They worked with IBM. They launched this new AI opportunity for some of their outlets, et cetera, et cetera. Literally within the last couple of days, they shut that down, right? So, but that's okay. It's not always going to be the big success you expect it to be. And that's part of your market research too. And to your point, I guess you would say I have a product-based business, thought it was going to be easy to launch, came out of corporate. Of course, I knew how to do this. Why wouldn't I? I have all this experience. Epic fail because number one, I spent so much on manufacturing. I priced my product out of the market, but I knew my numbers, and I had to price it that way to make a profit. And I didn't think about what the market would pay for it. Number two, spent way too much on digital marketing. And I didn't even have proof of concept. So that was the second mistake I made. And the third mistake is I decided to launch all of my entire line within like a 1 week period. So I did those top three mistakes right out of the gates, lost like you, I lost a ton of money and I have had to since recover from that. It was definitely a learning lesson.
You know, but here's the thing is like, whenever I look for somebody that as a mentor or someone that I want to learn from, or just like even like connect with, number one, talking about failures, like I congratulate you for that. Like I love doing it because like, I think the more that we can talk about like, hey, I screwed up here. So like, don't do what I did. Right. Or this worked really well. Give it a try. Maybe it'll work for your business. But I love like, it's so great because I know your background in the industry that you were in, product-based business, right? That like you were able to then pull that out here, epic failure, as you said, but you learned so much that now that not only you applied to your business, now you can apply to other businesses going forward. So I think that is so incredible that you're able to not only have the experience, but share it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there's a reason. So we should all be very comfortable sharing those things because there's a reason they happened to us. And again, it happened for me, not to me.
Words have meaning, folks. Words have meaning. Make sure you are, aware of that. Okay. So I know that you are big on marketing too, right?
Correct.
Small business owners or just business owners. I know you and I probably would walk into a restaurant and we're immediately, I know I do this and I feel pretty confident. I start thinking about the tables. I think about what the average turnover is. I think about what is their labor and how much they have on, not just because I owned a restaurant, just because like my brain is always like, how are they making money on that? That is like ridiculous. That's not like, how can they only charge this? Like, where are they getting this? Like, where are they cutting corners? Like, how are they saving? Like, I'm always thinking about ways in any business, as large as like Marriott brand or, as small as like a brand new launch. what are some marketing things that you or tactics or strategies that you would offer to help businesses spend their money wisely on marketing?
Okay, I have one, and this happens to me all the time, and I love sharing this. And let's not make it more difficult than we need to right out of the gates. Let's not spend a ton of money. Let's just, support each other here. So when I'm a big e-com shopper, I just am. I shop online. I've gotten used to that. And of course, since I'm in that space, so I shop small brands all the time. And when I get a package from a small brand, number one, you don't need to spend a lot of money on the box that comes in out of the gates. You don't need to do that. I know it really looks nice, and it's different if you're using it as a piece of marketing material to a buyer of a big retail outlet. Different conversation. To the consumer, we don't keep the box. We don't know what to do with the box. We feel bad throwing the box away unless you are the luxury brands that are out there and competing in that space. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Make sure it's sustainable packaging. More importantly, put something in that packaging that will make me go back and shop you. It is wasted real estate. So put a return for 20% off discount card, or pass this to a friend, or if you love this so much, XYZ, give me a call to action right there inside the package until you become a brand like, I don't know, Bombas or Quince or some of these really big brands. As you're building your business, I just had a call this morning. Just create a postcard from, whether it's Vistaprint or somewhere, Canva, make it inexpensive. Give me a code, because then you're going to track that discount code. So if I do keep it on my desk or by my nightstand or in my handbag, I'm going to go back. I'm either going to share it when somebody says, oh, that's cute, or that looks cool, or that's a good kitchen gadget, whatever it is, like that candle, all the things. I can gift it to somebody, or I can use it myself. Just don't miss that opportunity. What I'm saying is make low barriers of entry for me to go back and shop with you. The second piece is don't rely on social media all the time. Your email list, you own it as an asset of your business. If you are ever thinking about selling your product-based business, yes, your social followers and things like that are relevant. It depends on your ambassadors and things like that. But you could have bought those as a buyer of your company. I don't know necessarily until we dig deep. What I do know is if you have a robust email list, that's an asset of your company. And it used to be every email is worth $10. That average has been recently updated to every email address is worth between $33 and $65. So keep that, because you have to compute the lifetime value of a customer. That's a whole nother thing we can talk about at some point. Really, really important. So again, number one, don't miss the opportunity to get a second sale. If they bought your product, they're going to maybe go back and buy it again. Yes, you'll send them a follow-up email, but make it really, really easy. And then the second thing is build that email list. You'll own that forever. That will be part of your business as an asset, like your inventory.
Okay, that is absolutely incredible and some amazing advice. It's funny. I love hearing this, and I don't know about everyone tuning in, listening to this right now. I start thinking about businesses that I buy from. And I was like, man, who put the card in? Who puts a coupon in? Like, hey, thanks for buying. Hey, here's another 20% off your next item. I don't know about you. I save that. Are you kidding me? I'm like, heck yeah. And then the next email I get, I'm like, yeah, I was waiting for that. And that's what I want. And now I'm going to buy it and I have the coupon code and I'm happy again. Right? That call to action, I think no matter what, whether you're an accountant, right? An architect, a general contractor, right? You offer consulting services. How often are we asking our ideal clients to take action, right? The show is all about action. And I love that you sum that up and tying the two together with the email list, as well as giving an easy barrier to entry. It's just so valuable, whether you have a product or a service. And, I want to keep this conversation going on forever, because I feel like we opened up a few more cans of worms when it came to business. And I love that. So I think we're going to have a part 2, but I do want to respect your time. And I got to say, all of the value added today, I just got to tell you and acknowledge you. I am so grateful that we met. I am so grateful for this conversation and you sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Shelley. I've loved it. And like you, I could go on and on and on. I love asking you all these questions. I learned from you. I love the shared resources. I loved all the call to actions and taking action. Like I wrote down notes about things that you made me think about for my own business. So I appreciate you so much.
This is so great. No, please no, it is truly, truly, I am the grateful one, but I want everyone to be able to connect with you. I was actually just on your website earlier. It is fantastic. So we will absolutely link that, but where else can people find and connect with you?
I try to keep it really simple. Again, low barrier to entry, Carlyn Bushman Consulting on all my social channels. So that's all you have to type in and you'll get to all my social channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all the things. And I have a free workshop coming up. So just keep an eye out for that. 5 days of free education, which is really important. I am in that chapter in my life where I love to share with others and educate in that space. And again, my fall semester starts September of 2024.
We didn't even get into education. And I kind of teased that out in the beginning. So we definitely have to have a part 2. I am going to provide all of your links in the show notes. You absolutely want to connect with Carlyn because you can just hear the value, right? And the education, she is a professor too. We didn't even get into that. Like there's so much on the education space. Okay. Part 2 is more about education. So we are going to have to do that. Okay.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
So much again for tuning in. And if you love this episode, make sure that you share it out. This episode or this show is growing because of all of you, this community here on More Action, and tag us. We will share, we will give you all the love. And we definitely want to connect with you. If you sound like you were listening to 2 friends talking, we are, and we want to connect with you too and be able to have those conversations and grow together. So until next time, we will see you then.